Hi, everybody. What I wanted to do today is show you something that maybe you want to use in your Create Task program, which is a way of reading and writing files to save information so that you can load that information in again at the beginning of the program when the program is run. And that this will allow you to save information about the current state of the game so that when or application so that when your program begins to run again, you can load in initial values of different things. So the applications for this are enumerable. You can use this in a lot of different ways. I'm just going to show you a very basic example here where we're just going to use text console output and have the user enter and create account names with some account information, which is just going to be a string of information, which we can save whatever we want in there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start by just creating a main function, and I'm in a new Python file here. So this we need to kind of talk about what exactly we want to um, what exactly we want to do the first time the program runs. Because if the install maybe didn't create a file for the user to save data in, then we want to be able to create that file. But if that file already exists, we don't want to overwrite that file. And so we have to talk about how we can accomplish this. All right. So I'm gonna call main here, and I'm gonna start with just creating a file name variable, and I'm going to call it test.txt. Right? And we talked about this before, this with open. This was a few weeks ago, so I'm going to just refresh what it does. But this will open up a given file name, and then it had a couple optional parameters we had in here. So we could use R for read only. We can use A for append only. We can use R plus for reading and writing, and we can use W for just writing. Now, something we might want to do right away is maybe we want to append values to a file. So maybe we want to add new account information, but we don't want to modify the original. Then we could use the A function, which will append information to the file. And then we can say, okay, well, I want to go ahead and write a new string, and which I'm going to just call test with the new line character after it. And then that'll be our write line. Okay. And then I can simply run this code. And you'll see what it does is using append, it actually does create the file and adds the line of code test into that file. If we run this code again, you'll see that it outputs now 2 tests in that text file. So this seems to work well for what we want. But let's say that later on in my program, I wanted to read the data that was already in this file. So maybe I want to say, hey, what does this text file look like? So I've added some account information or some information about the state of my program, and I want to get that information back out. So we can use a for loop to read through a file. F dot, oops, I have to do this inside the with for line in f dot read lines. And then I can just say, print line. The problem with doing this, you'll see when I run this code, is that it says IO unsupportable operation not readable. Because we opened it for append only, then I run into the issue that I can't actually read the information that was previously put in that file. So your solution might be, well, let's just open it for reading and writing. Now, note that I have 3 tests in here, and I run this code, so it should add a 4th test to it, but it doesn't. It doesn't read that out. So this reading writing starts at the beginning of the file. So it's going to write this in at the beginning of the file, and then it's going to start reading from that point in time. So we could do something like seek the beginning of the file and then run it. And then we'll see that it has 4 out there. So this is an option for doing this. But let's say that, for example, let's see. Let's say this is the first time running our code, so we'll delete this file, and then run our code the first time. Now we get an error. And this is really the problem with using read plus. It assumes that the file already exists, and if the file doesn't exist, then we are running into issues. Okay, so we have to add on to this a little bit more. A can only append, so it's good if you want to just open up a file, add some stuff to it, but not modify the information that's in there. But if you want to modify existing information as well as maybe adding new information, then you have to use read plus. But if you use read plus, then it doesn't work to actually create the file if the file doesn't already exist. So how do we get around this without, going crazy? Well, what we can do is we can add in a try except. And so what the try except does is it will try to execute this code. And when it runs into the error that this file does not exist, what we can do is we can say, well, if you get that error, the file doesn't exist, then let's go ahead and create that file for the first time. So then we can open it up with a W to create it the first time as F. And we can say write our test \n. All right, so now if I run this code, it does create the file the first time, adds test to it. If I run the code again, and I refresh this file, let's see. Oh, and now okay. So now it's just rewriting. All right. So now each time it's overwriting what we currently have, which is quite interesting, because that wasn't happening before when the file didn't exist, but now it is, and so we're running into some issues here. All right, now whenever I write to a file, it's writing it at the beginning, and so what I actually need to do is I need to add in a seek. So when I open this up for read write and it already exists, in order to get this to add to the end of the file, because I'm not opening it for append anymore, then I need to seek to the end of the file. Seek has two parameters. One's optional, and one is necessary. So the first parameter is the offset. And this basically is how much do you want to offset relative to the beginning of the file. So if I say seek 0, then that just means go to the beginning of the file. If I say seek 5, that means go to line number 5 in the file. So the optional parameter is the second parameter, which is where you're offsetting from. 0 is offsetting from the beginning of the file. So 0, 0 will go to the beginning of file. 1 is relative to the current location. So if I want to go one line ahead, then I can say seek 1 from my current position. If I want to go to the end of the file, then I can use the optional parameter 2 and seek relative to the end of the file. And I would want to say seek 0, 2. This will seek to the end of the file. And so now I seek to the end of the file before writing, and then I can go ahead and you'll see now each time you run it, it does add a line to the test file. All right. And then if we want to, make it so our console output doesn't display, we can append many things to that. And then, so each time we run it, we add a new line. And this is kind of going to be the basis for what we want to do. All right. So let's go ahead into the next thing, which is actually creating a mini kind of loop for our program to run in. So I'm going to kind of modify this a little bit. I'm going to, instead of just calling this test.txt, we're going to call this something like account info.txt. All right. So this will be our account data for, for some sample program that we're running. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to basically start by opening up the information in the file and then pulling it out of those files. The reason you don't want to keep the file open while the program is running is if something happens with the program where it crashes, then it could end up corrupting some of that stuff in the file if the file is open. So typically what you would do is you would open up the file, you would store all the data into variables, and then you would close the file. You run the program, and then temporarily, every once in a while, you might save the file. It might be when you close the program and end, or it might be as you go. Maybe every few seconds you save the information. If it's like something like Microsoft Word, where it's uploading it to the server and backing it up every few seconds. So something like that's happening in the background. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to open it up once at the beginning to read in our information, and then once at the end to save the information. And then we're going to have our program run in the middle. The user will be able to input stuff, and then it'll save it, at the end. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a list to read in the information. So I'm going to call this list file data. So with open file name, and then since we're not editing the information at the beginning, we're just reading it in. I'm going to change this to R. We're starting at the beginning of the file, so I don't need this seek. We're not writing anything. And so I'm just going to say, instead of for_line in f.readlines, I'm just going to say file data equals f.readlines. All right, and then if the file doesn't exist, then we're going to create the file. And our list should be empty because there's no information in there. So we'll just say file data equals empty list. All right. So what this does is this reads information into the list or creates the file for the first time. So you'd want to put this code in setup or something that's going to run at the beginning of your code. The try except ensures here that we're either reading in, or if it's the first time the program is running, the file gets created. All right, now what we're going to use is we're going to use a dictionary here. Now, it depends on what your data looks like in the file. Maybe you would want to use a class here instead of a dictionary. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to have a file full of data that basically looks like this. So the format for the file is going to be account name with a tab character, and then followed by a account info, and that could be anything. So that, again, this could be like a link to a class. It could be a couple pieces of information. We could have a whole bunch of different things in here. For us, we're just going to use a string, and then a new line character at the end. So that's going to be what our file format of our file looks like. Each line number is going to be 2 strings representing account name, representing account information. So we're going to use a dictionary to store all this in. And so we're going to read it in from our file data. We're going to create 2 variables called account name and account info, which are going to be read in using this line.split function, which is just going to separate it based on our tab character. And then I'm expecting 2 maximum possible splits. We should probably make sure that the account information and data that they put in does not include a tab character, because that would break our code, but otherwise this will work fine. And then what I'll do is I'll add these each into our dictionary. All right, so now this basically reads the file. This reads the file information into a manageable data type, which is our dictionary. Okay, so in our code here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a little loop that just does, it just gives us some options. So we'll have our variable here, and we'll start with this function called print options. So what is print options going to do? This is just going to tell our user, hey, what do you want to do? All right, so maybe we just create a little console menu for them. So we say, here are your options. You can, maybe 1, you can create a new account. Option 2, maybe you can get an existing account's information. 3, maybe you can get or update an existing account's information. And then maybe 4 we say is our quit option. So this will just be a console application, no graphics necessary for it, but it'll execute one of these 4. And so this is just like our menu here for the user to use. All right. So now we'll have to get user input. And so if you remember, there's a function for this called input that we can use. And we can tell them to please select an option between 1 and 4. And we'll save that into a variable called selection. So what we're going to do is make sure they entered a valid input. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try and convert selection to an int. If it's not an int, then they're going to get an exception, which will mean that they typed something invalid. So we'll tell them, hey, that was an invalid input, and then it will print the options and then have them select an option. So it'll restart the loop. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they put a correct option, right? There's still selection 1 through 4. So our other valid option will be if they didn't pick 1, 2, 3, or 4, then we'll print invalid selection, and it'll have them try again. So this is if they accidentally typed in a string or something like that, and this is if they didn't actually type a number 1 to 4. All right. So I'll have an if selection equals 1, if selection equals 2, if selection equals 3, and then if selection equals 4, and then finally else. All right, so selection 4 is easy. That's our quit. So all we have to do is set done equal to true, and maybe print goodbye, something like that. But selections 1, 2, and 3, we have to modify the information. So this is going to be a little bit of practice with working with dictionaries. So hopefully this is something that you guys can work on and see what you can do here. But hopefully it's a review. It's been a while since we've worked with dictionaries explicitly, I think. So yeah, this might be a useful review for you. But we'll get to the saving the file at the end. So if you're just concerned about saving the file, you can fast forward the video a little bit and get to that point and see how we do that. But for actually having the user interact with this, maybe we want to for the first account, we want them to create an account. So we're going to ask them, hey, like what's going to be the account name? So we might say, enter your account name. And then we can say like, if the account name is already in the dictionary, which was our data file dictionary, this means the account already exists. And so we shouldn't allow them to create another account or override that information that's already in there. So let's tell the user, let's inform them that, hey, that account name already exists, and we'll take them back to the option. All right. Else, if it doesn't exist, then we can have them input the info, enter your account info, and then we can save that in a variable, and then we'll put that account information into the variable or into the dictionary using the account name as the key. So we're basically setting up a link between these two. So maybe your account info is your password. So maybe you're creating an account name with a password. Maybe you want to keep track of high scores in your game. And so you want to have like a username and you want to have their score. And so you can make a dictionary where the username is linked to the score. And then you could sort them out and see like, oh, if this person had a higher score, then they go higher in the list or something like that. Actually, you'd have to use list for that, but it would work still in the same way. All right, but this updates that information, and then that's all we have to do for that. So now let's see. if option number 2 or 3, those are actually going to be somewhat the same. So get an existing accounts info or updating existing accounts info, they're going to start the same way. So we're actually going to group these together into one if statement. If its selection is 2 or 3, we want to ensure that the account name is actually in the dictionary. So if the account name is not in the dictionary, so similar to what we did at number 1, but adding in the not, so the account doesn't exist, then we should tell the user, hey, that account name does not exist. And so then they know, okay, that account name doesn't exist, I need to create it. Otherwise, now we would want to go into our selection. If the selection is 2, then that means they want to get an existing account information. So we would just print the account info. We can get the account info out of the dictionary by taking that account name. Oh, I forgot to ask the user for the account name they want to look up. So account name equals input, enter existing account name. All right. So then the account info would correspond to that name, and then we would say, okay, let's print out the account name for them. So, we could do something like the account info for, and then I'm just going to use the built-in Python string formatting here. So I use squiggly brackets as placeholders, and then I put dot format and then the variable names that I want to put in here at the end. So account name, account info. So just displaying those two things. Oh, that's wrong. Okay. All right, that's fine. And then that should be it, right? We get the existing accounts information, we print it out, and they're done. If the selection was 3, then still we want to get the account info from the user now because they want to update it. So we can say, okay, please update the or enter the new account info. And then we could say for format account name, so it puts that in, enter the new account info for this account, and then we can add that to our dictionary. So file dictionary account name, and then equals account info, and that'll overwrite the information that was in there already. All right, so that's about it. That'll run our code. Now the last thing we need to do is save the output so that when they do hit, they're done, the program ends, but we want to save everything that user did during this. So we're going to reopen that file that we had, and I'm going to rewrite it for writing only. Now remember, this is going to erase everything that was previously in that file. But this is okay because I have all that information saved in the data. What you probably want to do would be actually creating a new temporary file and like copying that file, then erasing it, making sure your program doesn't crash, and then saving that information, especially if you're writing a lot of information. Just to be careful that you don't erase the file and then something crashes and then you've lost all that information. So what you would basically do is you have your original copy of the file, you create your new file that's storing the new information, and then once that creates it correctly, you just rename it to overwrite the old one. Or you could maybe move the other file into a backups folder or something like that if you wanted to, keep that information. Anyway, we're not going to do that for right now. All we're going to do is just, assume that this will be able to write a few lines of text and we'll be okay. So the account name is going to, or sorry, the account names are all stored in this dictionary via their keys. And for each of the account name in that list of keys, we can get the account information by saying file dictionary account name, and then we can write each of the account name info strings. Now, the string has to be in this format, so we have to make sure that we put the name, and then the tab sequence character, and then the information, and then the new line character. And then we can dot format this with our account name, account info, and voila. Our code will write the save the output, and then let's see what happens. Okay, so we can run this. Hopefully I didn't type anything in wrong. It runs. All right, so here we go. So we have, first off, we've started this program running, and we've created a new file. And so here I can say, all right, well, I want to create a new account. And let's say that I want to add in Alice to the file as my account name, and her account information will be, I don't know, 25, whatever that 25 means. All right. And then so it'll ask me again, here are your options. What do you want to do? Create a new account, get an existing account's info, whatever. So let's see, did it save Alice? So I hit 2, enter existing account name. I can say, what is Alice? And then it says the account info for Alice is 25. Right? So maybe I can update it. If I accidentally make a typo, it'll tell me that account name doesn't exist. I can enter a new variable for Alice, say 30, and then I can quit. And when the program ends, it will then create this file called whatever the file name is. And it'll write to that file Alice and then 30. So, you could foreseeably use this for a whole bunch of different information. All right. What's cool is when I run this code again and I say, hey, I want to get an existing account info, and I can type in Alice, and it saves that fact that Alice is 30. The account information for Alice is 30. And I didn't have to retype that information in. And so as people use your program or use your application, and it continuously adds new accounts, so maybe Bob makes an account and he adds, the data of, I don't know, 35. And then you quit again. Now it saves both Alice and Bob here. Okay. And so then we can run this again. Oh, and then I actually, let's see. I think we don't actually want this because it added an extra new line character into my account info, which is why these are split. So let's see if that works now. All right, so let's create a third account for Charlie. We'll make him 45, and then let's see if that worked. Yeah, and that seems to work. So you don't want the new line character there. The write automatically puts a new line whenever it writes a line. All right, so that wraps this up. You can use this in your create tasks when you want to maybe save information about whether you want to create accounts, so it saves preferences. Maybe you want to create a high score list or something like that. So there's a lot of different applications that you could be used for. I mean, technically you could use something like this for passwords, although you probably don't want to save user passwords on a text file on that person's computer. You would want to encrypt that data and put it somewhere. But yeah, that's it for this video. So I hope you guys were able to follow along, and I will also post this code so that you can look through it as well and use pieces of it in your create task. So have a good one. I'll see you later on.